Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's REI Weekly Deal Breakdown. I'm your host, Greg Helbeck, and on this show, I'm going to talk to you about how I paid a wholesaler $105,000 for a deal in New York, which is crazy. So, if you're interested in learning about that, this is going to be a very entertaining show. Before I get into the actual deal, if you're not familiar with me, my name is Greg Helbeck. I bought well over 200 houses, been a full-time real estate investor now for 8 years. So, all the information on this podcast is going to be directly from my experience, not regurgitated theory out of a book. So if you do get value from this show, if you can do me a real big favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube and like the video. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, if you can share this with other people, it would really mean a lot to me. That's how we keep growing the show. So today we're talking about 144 Roosevelt Avenue in Hyde Park, New York, which is north of Poughkeepsie. So really good area in Dutchess County. And the way that I found this deal was an interesting way. It was actually on a Facebook group. So long story short, I was sitting in my house on a random Saturday night and I saw this out of town wholesaler posted a property in Hyde Park. And he put the numbers out and I'm like, whoa, this seems like a deal. I don't know if he really knows what he has on his hands here. So I called him immediately at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, which no one's usually working. And I'm normally not working either, but I happen to be at home. So got lucky seeing that post. I knew if he posted this on a Monday morning, he was going to get blown up with buyers. So I figured this was a good opportunity to hopefully make a deal. And I said, call me ASAP. And he called me. He was out of town. I think he lived in Texas or something like that. And I said, hey, listen, what's going on with this property? I want to buy it. I don't want to compete with people. What would it take to get this deal right now? And let me talk to my partner. So he calls his partner. He calls me back. He said, if you can give me $5,000 over what I'm asking, I'll sell it to you right now. I said, done, son, done deal. So I was like, yes, that works. Send me the paperwork. He sent me over the assignment agreement. Before I saw it, I was like making a joke with him. Number one, I don't care how much wholesalers make. Like I'm a wholesaler myself a lot of the time. So the more you make, the better. And I was like, hey man, I hope you're making 100 grand on this. And I thought he was making maybe 20 or 30. And he's like, I'm actually making 105,000. I'm like, that's awesome. Congrats. That's actually lesson number one. Don't count other people's money, right? Don't do it. Everyone's got to make money. If a wholesaler gets a really good deal and the numbers still make sense for you, it doesn't matter whether the wholesale's making 1,000 or 100 million on the deal. I didn't try to beat him up on price and be like, oh man, you got this. You're making 105 grand. Can you do any better? I'm like, nope, that's fine. I'll sign the assignment agreement. I said, congrats on making 105 grand. That's an amazing assignment fee. I said, how the hell did you find a seller to sell you a house that cheap? He's like, PPC. I said, that makes sense. So anyway, we went right into contract. He was out of town, so he didn't really have the right paperwork. So I had him use my attorney to actually do the paperwork the right way. So he was protected and the seller was protected. I ended up getting that new paperwork signed with the attorney. So he actually double closed, which means that he bought the house from the seller and then I bought it from him. So it was actually two separate transactions, not an assignment of contract. So we got the paperwork squared away. And my plan originally on this deal was to just throw it back on the market or do a rehab. But after looking at the deal, I was like, this seems pretty interesting. And I was going to close on it regardless. But I said, you know what? I think I might be able to wholesale this guy's wholesale. And I would not advise to do that if you're new. However, because I was going to buy it no matter what, and I was going to close regardless, whether I found a buyer or not, I'm like, I'm going to go for this. So I ended up texting one of these guys who really wanted to buy a property from me. We hadn't done a deal yet up to this point. And I said, hey man, I got this property in Hyde Park under contract. Do you want to buy it off of me for, I think, 245 or something like that? And he's, I'll take it for 245. So I said, cool, that sounds like a plan to me. And I ended up sending him an actual contract. So this was not an assignment. I ended up double closing. So technically it was a triple closing. I bought the house from the wholesaler. The wholesaler gave me the deed. And then I sold the property. So basically everyone made money, right? I ended up making $20,000 on this thing without having to technically own it for more than 2 hours. And, the way I looked at it was like, okay, if I bought this thing, closed on it, cleaned it out, put it on the market, I'd probably make 40 grand, maybe 50 because it needed some work. I said, I can make 20 right now or I can make 40 in 4 months. I'll take the 20 right now or the 40 in 4 months with a lot more uncertainty. Ended up closing. There was a little hiccup on the deal. I remember there was a problem with the deck. There was no permit. So I actually made the wholesaler get the permit because I had my contract say it has to be free and clear of violations. And the deck was a violation. Wholesaler ended up spending the money to get the deck fixed. And then I obviously transferred that to the buyer. Ended up being a win situation. Seller, wholesaler, me, buyer. And what are some lessons you can learn from this? Number one, like I said earlier, don't count wholesalers' money. If a wholesaler's making 100 grand, good for them. Like it is what it is. That's their business, not yours. Because as long as the price makes sense to the buyer, who cares what the wholesaler makes, whether it's 10 or 100,000. In this case, it was 105,000. So good for him. I didn't count his money and he was happy with me and I did everything I said I was going to do. Number two, if you're going to wholesale someone's wholesale, you have to be able to close on it no matter what. You cannot tell a wholesaler you're buying their house from them and you're only going to buy it if you find a buyer. Like that's bad business. But in my case, I was going to close on it no matter what because the numbers made sense regardless. I just happened to find someone to pay 20 grand more than I had. So I figured I'd make a quick nickel over a slow dime, as they say. So sometimes a quick nickel does beat a slow dime when you got to factor in closing costs and all that stuff. So I wholesaled his wholesale and it worked out for everybody. Yeah, I didn't make 105 grand, but I also made 20 grand on a deal I found for free on Facebook. So I didn't really care. It was cool for me. That was like our typical wholesale deal in that area anyway, is 20, 25K. So I pretty much made more in this case because I had no cost of acquisition because I got the deal from the wholesaler for free. When I say free, I obviously paid him 105 grand, but it didn't cost me any marketing money to find that deal. And then lesson number 3, this is interesting lesson here. When you're working with out of state wholesalers, like this guy did not live in New York. I think he lived in Texas or something like that. And he was like a national wholesaler. He didn't really know what he had because he made 105 grand wholesaling me the house, but I knew he still was underselling it. So I was able to capitalize on his lack of market knowledge, I guess to say. And I still ended up making 20 grand wholesaling his wholesale and I ended up working out. But if he just bought that house, my God, if he bought that house and closed, even if he got hard money, he probably would have made 180 to 200 just literally buying that house for, I think he got it for 125 grand and putting it back on the market. Anyway, to wrap this whole thing up, if you're going to wholesale someone's wholesale, this is the main point here, the main takeaway. Always be able to close yourself. So if that buyer bailed or if someone didn't want it or whatever, I would have bought the house regardless from the wholesaler. I would have done everything I said I was going to do. So that's how you do it. At the end of the day, you got to do what you say you're going to do and deliver on your promises. So hopefully you got value from this. If you did, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, and then share the show if you're listening on an audio platform. And if you're in the Hudson Valley, just like this guy was out of state, he had a Hudson Valley property, you have a house you want to wholesale to me or wholesale with me, either way is fine. Email me, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com, or send me an Instagram DM at grego_37. I hope you got value from this week's REI deal breakdown, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.